Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking a fun and exciting video for you guys today, and one that I think you're all going to be very surprised by. That is because we are playing Friday the 13th, but we are playing Friday the 13th Revisited for the Game Boy Color. If you're familiar with the original Friday the 13th game on the NES by LJN, it was widely panned, and even back in the day, I rented it more than once because I loved horror movies as a kid, and I could never figure out what in the holy hell I was supposed to do in the game. But now it's been completely remade on the Game Boy Color by a dev going by ZG Games, and not only have they done an amazing conversion of this game, making it look even better than the NES original in my opinion, they've actually changed the structure of the gameplay, taking a game from bad to, dare I say it, actually good. It's one of those things. Friday the 13th has always been a meme game, but this new actual remake goes to show that there's actually a good game in here somewhere. It just took a talented developer to find it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. Now, I'm not trying to tell you that suddenly Friday the 13th is a 10 out of 10, but I would say in any good day of the week, the NES original, maybe a 5 out of 10 if you were being optimistic about it. I would say that this new remake on Game Boy Color lifts it up more to like a 7.5 out of 10. Yes, the overall gameplay structure can still be a little bit repetitive, but with all of the new additions and changes that ZG Games has made here, it makes the game that much more fun and actually an enjoyable experience. And trust me when I say there is a ton of expanded gameplay here, basically making this feel like an entirely new game, and the de facto best way to play Friday the 13th for sure. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, did you play Friday the 13th back in the day on NES or not? And have you ever played it in modern times? I just always remember the box art looking amazing at my local rental place, because as a kid my dad would basically let me watch any horror movie out there. When I saw this, I absolutely had to rent it and thought I was going to get a 10 out of 10 fun experience, because as a kid I had absolutely no idea who LJN was, and honestly now that I know as an adult, not surprising it was bad. But remakes like this are really why retro gaming is making a comeback. They're even taking bad games and making them good. And as far as the actual conversion here, obviously it's coming down to the Game Boy Color hardware versus the NES, but there's a ton of expanded gameplay here as well. There's better controls, and that definitely makes a huge difference. You're not going to have to fight to play this game. And now there's going to be an entire trading mechanic in here as well. You can collect items and trade them with other advisors or camp counselors in the game to basically get more powerful weapons. So there is a lot more depth here, and that makes a huge difference because suddenly this game is a lot more playable. And that's something Friday the 13th absolutely needed, an improvement into the playability, because you can definitely slog through this, especially if you're a huge fan of the movie, but there really wasn't much meat on the bone. And now that we're actually having our first fight here with Jason, it's one of those things. This is just a better overall experience. The combat is better and more responsive. You can kill Jason, but he will come back, of course, because it is Friday the 13th, but it just ends up being that much more fun. And you're also going to be able to get new healing potions as well from a certain camp counselor in the game. Now, I don't want to ruin everything for you because this has a lot of surprises in here. Things that if you play the original from start to finish, you've never seen before. But just take it from me. Suddenly, Friday the 13th, the NES game, on Game Boy Color has become a, dare I say it, good game. Not something I expected to ever say, let alone in 2026, but ZG Games figured out the formula to making this thing an actually enjoyable experience. And trust me, that is no easy feat. Taking a bad game and making it good is something that's probably one of the upper echelon more difficult things to do in ROM hacking. And even though this really isn't a ROM hack, it is a full recreation. ROM hacking is just kind of the umbrella term. Well, you leave me a comment down below and you tell me so far, is what you're seeing and what you're hearing going to convince you to try Friday the 13th again, or for the first time, are you still going to leave it in the overall garbage bin of quote-unquote bad games? Because LJN was notorious for leaving some absolute dumpers out there when it came to gaming, but it really goes to show that a lot of things maybe weren't bad just because they were bad. Maybe they were rushed, maybe they didn't have all the time in the world to actually make the game, because licensed games are usually quick turn and burn affairs, especially back in the day, where all they wanted to do was get the game on the shelf as quickly as possible to make some cash. But of course you're going to get a different soundtrack as well, because now the music is going to be on Game Boy Color. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll come back and talk more about the changes that make this game good. I mean, it definitely has a good horror vibe to it. It does sound good coming out of the Game Boy Color, but again, I just can't believe there actually was potentially a good game in something like Friday the 13th. It just took a lot of changes. Now, obviously, the core gameplay loop is going to be the same. You're traversing the world, you're going through the maps, you're stopping at different cabins, and trying to figure out where the camp counselors are, where Jason is, and how you can actually progress the story. But you're going to be getting a lot more here. And the nice thing is this works basically across any platform. You can play it on original Game Boy Color, you can play it on the Mr. FPJ core, the analog pocket core, and of course via software emulation as well. But it really is the additions here that make a huge difference. There's also going to basically be an actual mechanic where you have to keep more of the advisors alive to get more information out of them. Just kind of think something like Dead Rising when you kind of lose the case thread, but here it has to do with the camp counselors instead. And that really is fun, because if this is somehow your favorite game on NES, and trust me, it might be someone's favorite, no judgments there, this is going to pivot up enough where you're basically going to feel like you're playing a game that looks, sounds, and plays familiar, but also has a ton of changes at its core gameplay mechanic level. And that definitely is something really fun to see, because a lot of times in demakes, people just take the game, bring it down to lower powered hardware, and just run with it. But here, it's basically like an entirely new reimagining. The developer decided what works about Friday the 13th and what doesn't work, and how can I actually improve upon all of the areas that are definitely rough in this game. And I'm sure it took a very heavy grit sandpaper to round out those rough edges, because they were plentiful in the original release. But honestly, Zechi Games has figured out that formula, and it really makes me think, are some of these other licensed NES games that weren't fun back in the day potentially able to be made into good games? Because again, it's not like this has changed genres, it hasn't changed gameplay styles, it has just expanded upon all of the gameplay here in Friday the 13th and basically made it way more playable, way more intuitive, and way less frustrating. Because trust me, the original base game, frustration is the name of the game. It just absolutely will drive you nuts. But as a kid, even though I knew this game wasn't fun, it's one of those things, seeing Jason in a game, one of those horror movie icons come to life, absolutely was a good time. And it kind of makes me think the Nightmare on Elm Street game, also another one that I loved renting as a kid, and even though it isn't a great game, I wonder if that could be made to be good as well. Because honestly, in this era, as far as licensed horror games is concerned, I can't really think of one that actually did a great job of both mirroring the tone and fun of the movies, and also being an effectively good video game as well. But if you can think of an NES game based on a horror movie license that is good, leave that comment down below, because I'm sure I am forgetting one. And if you want to check this one out, the link is in the description below, so you can pop over and play it. Because trust me, the only wrong way to play this one is not to check it out, because it is a real masterclass in just how to make a bad game good. And anything horror related is going to be fun to me. Maybe it would have been fun to get a little bit of blood effect on Jason here as you throw these knives at him, but otherwise, kind of feels a little bit like playing a really weird horror version of Punch-Out. One more soundtrack sample because it really does work, and I'll be right back with just a little bit more info for you. I mean, again, I love the music on the Game Boy Color, and really, I kind of love everything about this one. I don't want you to think, again, I'm trying to say it's a perfect game. It is still at its heart Friday the 13th, so it does still have a little bit of that overall NES jank to it, but now it's the most delicious flavor of jank versus one that you just basically thought to yourself, what the hell were they thinking when they developed this one? And this could not have been an easy thing to make either. Not only do you need to remake the entirety of the base game on the Game Boy Color, but then you need to decide to yourself all the mechanics you can improve, all the quality of life improvements you can bring in, and everything else that would take something that's a very frustrating game and actually make it enjoyable. And Zechi Games, if you're watching this video, and I hope you are, you absolutely nailed this one, and maybe take on Nightmare on Elm Street next. I'd love to see what you do with this formula, because classic 80s horror movies, just something I grew up on, even if I was too young to watch them and probably had some terrible nightmares. So seeing these games suddenly become a decent playable experience was not something I had on my dance card for 2026, but I'm absolutely here for it and I'm stoked to see it. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Hope you enjoyed the video, and take it from me, it might not be perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than the NES original. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.